Good evening, my name is Dr. Woods, and we are going to be talking about team management, excuse me, and what that looks like. So as we're moving through this lesson tonight, we're going to be talking about some objectives. And some of the objectives that we're going to be looking at is how to understand and explain the remote environment. We're going to be able to create and manage employee engagement initiatives. We're going to talk about how we can make meaningful connections with peers and then other team members. And then we're going to look at how do we build a lasting culture of gratitude at work, and then how do we assess that? So what does that look like? As we know, the work environment itself has changed significantly since COVID-19. We have now become more of a work from home type of economy. We now have more resources to be able to work at home. How many people in the class tonight have changed the way that you view your job, whether it's going into an office or whether it's coming home and working while you're in the office? And how many of you have ever had a set schedule, for example, Monday through Friday, with very little flexibility? And this is where I would wait and see the students answering. They would, put up their hand emoji. They would start to speak up. I often encourage speaking with students, especially on an online environment like this. It helps us build relationships. It helps us to be engaging, especially with our class that we may have, so that I'm not just lecturing with them. And so since the COVID-19, 75% of workers, both male and female, stress the importance of retaining flexibility over their work schedules. And the workforce, because of that reason, it has dramatically changed over the past few years. We're now seeing an increase in areas of flexible, hybrid, and remote opportunities that were not once available. So we're starting to see a lot of things that are opening up. And with those hybrid, we're going to look at what that looks like and how the employee is able to spend their time working from home and then also going into an office and working. When we look at what does that environment look like, we have to look at remote working environment. And that remote work environment is work that is capable of being done outside of the traditional office setting that we have. It's more commonly known as what we've been talking about from working from home or telecommuting. The concept that started with this was that employees have the ability to execute projects and daily tasks without needing to commute to an office each day. And so remote work, it helps to offer flexibility for employees to balance their personal and professional life. There's three types of remote work that we're going to look at. That's called fully remote work, or the fully remote employee, the hybrid employee, and then of course the freelance employee. Has anyone ever heard of any of these types of employments? And then I would wait for the student to kind of, again, raise their hand and engage inside of a discussion as we move forward. And that's going to tie that into the next slide, which would be fully remote employee. When we look at that fully remote employee, that's the employee that wants to work full-time from a remote location, such as their home or a public space. As we've seen since COVID, there's lots of businesses that are opening up that are renting out or allowing public space to occur. A lot of coffee shops, things like that, because it's bringing in the business that they're wanting to see, as well as maintaining the fact that they can not have the distractions they would normally have if they were at home, especially if their kids were home from school during a time period where they're working from home or something. The great thing about being able to work from home is being able to work from anywhere in the country or in the world, and being able to communicate with those team environments the way that we're communicating tonight. So we could be in different time zones in different states, in different areas, different parts of the world, and we're still able to communicate with that. Some of the things we look at is we try to take away from the distractions would be like if you have animals or pets in the house, if you have background movement, noise, your lighting may be inappropriate. You may have to bump that up a little bit. So that's why we look at all these different ways that we can work from home, but how we can make that to be more successful, especially as a team environment that we're looking for. When we look at that hybrid employee, that's the employee that really is like, hey, I have a really flexible schedule. I'm able to go into the office and work for a few hours or a few days a week, and then I'm also able to kind of come back home. Recent studies released by Microsoft stated that over 70% of employees want remote work options, but 65% want more time in person with their teams. So because of that reason, we're starting to see an increase in technology that is allowing us to be able to sit face-to-face and to be able to not only have meetings in person, but also meetings over the computer as well. So there was a study that was released by Gallup in 2023 that suggested that employees who worked in a hybrid setting has the highest engagement, whereas the employees who work fully remote have the highest area of burnout. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the hybrid employee has more engagement, whereas the fully from home employee kind of gets burnout? And at this point, I would look and assess the students and kind of see what their thought was as far as like not having work-life balance, not being able to cut the computer off, maybe not taking into consideration the different time zones that they would work at, things of those things that we would look at. And then I would also relay off of what they're saying, and then I would tie that into the fact that some examples of that would be like teaching or doing IT, insurance, organizations, things of that nature. And then we would come in and talk about the freelance employee. Because that freelance employee are those who can perform the task that's needed within the organizational structure or team, and they are independent contractors. So there's a number of people that go into freelance positions because it's very popular these days, especially since COVID, like we've been talking about, because there's no end cap on their salary. Their schedule is what they make it. They can be available for part-time or full-time hours. A recent study released from Forbes in 2022 stated that 51 million people have reported to move into this area and be interested in moving into this area. So because of that, they're expecting a rise in the percentage of jobs to open up about 34% within the next 2 years. So by 2026, we're going to look at a huge increase of the opportunity to be able to be a freelance worker. And some of the examples that we look at would be accountants, human resource managers, security experts, database administrators, things of that nature. And then I would just kind of go in and I would ask the students some more open-ended questions as far as, do you know anyone that is a freelance? Have you thought about freelancing? What kind of other employment opportunities would you think about freelancing? Things of that nature, and kind of move them toward the objectives that we stated in the beginning. And then we would look at what that team looks like. So when we're looking at teams, those are the people or persons that are associated to work together in an activity or a project. I always have to say, can teams be local? Do teams have to be in the same time frame? Do they have to be in the same hemisphere? Can they be globally? What does that look like for them? And then I start to ask these open-end questions about teams and what they consider a team to be and how they consider communication to work well within a team. And then how would they manage their teams, especially if they were in virtual teams, and kind of get a feel for how the class is looking at that. And then again, move them toward the objectives that we've set for that day. When we look at teams and what an effective team looks like, teams are typical building blocks of any organization that we go through. Teams provide organizations the means to combine various skills, talents, and perspectives to be able to achieve its goals that it needs. Due to a change in the way that organizations practices business, teams are becoming more proficient in organizing projects over distances with team members who were dispersed in geographical locations. And then I would ask questions again of the students to ask them through what kind of roadblocks or stumble areas could you find out for teams and what that would look like. And again, just kind of keep in mind those objectives. And so then we would look into the management of remote teams. And due to the new look of teams, organizations are now looking for effective strategies in managing areas such as employee motivation, communication, diversity, and inclusion, and then of course, project management. The performance measures within virtual teams is something that organizations can continue to monitor due to its organizations are learning new ways and goals to align with that employee and with the expectations of their growth that they're trying to get into. And so now they're able to actually not as much overhead as an organization would normally have because they don't have the employees that are coming into the office and spending 8, 9, 10, 12 hours in the office. They're actually being able to work from home, showing productivity, and then work within those teams within different time limits as well. So they're seeing that there's very flexibility there for organizations to stay in that hybrid and or a fully remote area. When we look at motivation factors, in order to create motivation within your virtual team, you need to understand what motivates yourself and, of course, your team members. You can use a number of tools and methods to assess your personal and your team's motivation. So some of the things that we've looked at in the past and I've used myself are surveys and then interviews and, of course, self-reflection. We have measurement tools such as work engagement scales, which are called WESs, W-E-S's, and they can help to also measure the vigor, dedication, and absorption of the goals within the work that we're offering our teams and that we're assessing with our teams. And then by assessing your team's motivation, you can identify factors that influence your performance and then, of course, the satisfaction that your team member has. So what we want to do is we want to see a very satisfied team, very motivated team. And then again, I would go through and start asking some open-ended questions, kind of listening to the students, kind of engaging them, getting them moving, even though it is an online course, so that we can, again, build that trust factor, open communication, and then the learning objectives will be taking place. And then we'll move into, if we're talking about motivation factors, we're also having to talk about the culture and what exactly does that culture look like. So a large factor that impacts your motivation in a virtual team is the culture and climate of your team and organization itself. We have to be able to build those positive cultures, and you have to be able to establish trust among our team members. Trust can be built by you showing open, transparent, and effective communication, and then setting expectations, having a positive attitude and a mindset toward your team and toward the members and the organization itself. So what does that mean to have effective communication? What does that look like? I would ask students about things like that. I would also look at, what does it mean to be open and transparent? Does that mean giving everybody all your business, or does that mean telling the what if and the whys? So things of that nature. I personally am very open and transparent whenever I talk to students, especially when I'm talking, or to team members, especially when I want them to do something that they may not really understand or they may not agree with. This is the reason I need you to do this. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is the goal, and this is the time frame that we're going to accomplish this in. And then by being very open, by setting those expectations, by being very transparent with my team members and or my students, it allows us to have that trust factor that we need within teams, and it allows us to be able to build that culture that we need. When we look at teaching within virtual teams, and we have to also look at the technology that we have, because virtual teams are required to use technologies to help facilitate the workflow, the communication, and the project management. You know, with digital workplaces and employees, they have to have the ability to run a remote office. They have to be able to ask questions, and they have to be able to share information. And in order to do that, we have to build the culture that allows that. We have to know that they're able to have input, we're able to listen, and then effectively communicate, you know, the whys, the hows, and the what fors. And so one important aspect of this is the conferencing tool that we use. You know, conferencing tools allows for team members to make voice calls. We can hold face-to-face meetings. We can send instant messages. We can relay and share information. We can schedule meetings with one another. You know, a great example that I like to use a lot is Microsoft Outlook. By using these online tools, we also have this online cloud storage that we can do, and these calendars. So we can check our calendars, we can check our cloud storage, we can send out surveys, we can look at platforms, we can plan, manage, store, access, all the things that we need to be able to move our organization and our students toward the common goal that we're setting for them. And so we would look at all of those things and what that looks like. And then when we look at strategies to gauge success, one of the things that I like to do is I like to hold regular check-ins and one-on-one conversations. So I like to have meetings with my team members, and I like to be able to go into a live classroom and teach my students, but I also want to have office hours that allow me to face-to-face and have one-on-ones, and that allows me to be able to have regular check-ins so I can say, hey, how are you feeling? How is this going? Do you have any questions for me? Anything I can help with? Anything I need to clear up with that? Because with doing that, it allows me to be able to have that constant communication that I need. It allows me to be transparent. It allows me to provide support. It allows me to be able to solicit the feedback that I need from my team members and or my students, especially in those areas that they're not too sure about. So because of that, I can help to promote cultural awareness that we need within that virtual team and that virtual classroom. So if we have any questions at this point, I would ask for clarification or questions as we've had the conversations along with the different meetings that we've had, the one-on-ones, the check-ins, the class, the live classroom, things of that nature. And this pretty much is how I teach. I teach in person this way, I teach hybrid, and I also teach online, fairly to this degree actually. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thank you so much.